Second, the explanation will be on the TP-Link router, but it's the same process actually for all. After entering the main router page, you will be asked to provide the username and password. Now, usually the username is admin and the password is admin. Now, this is all in small letters. Then after that, head over to the DHCP settings under the network section. And then, go to the DHCP client list, which has all lists of all connected devices and their MAC addresses. Now, the MAC address on the B827EB4848D7 is actually for Raspberry Pi head to address the reservation and add the MAC address that you got. When connecting to Raspberry Pi to another computer using network cable, you would need a standard network cable, like this one in this diagram. You would also need an SD card, and as well as a Raspberry Pi model. Now, setting the Raspberry Pi, you need to remove the Raspberry Pi from the electricity and connect the SD card to your computer. You will get the name boot, and then enter the boot folder and open the cmdline.txt, which has the startup settings for the Raspberry Pi, and then head to the end of the file and add network IP as this one. The IP is 192.168.1.10. Then after finishing the edit, save the file and reattach the SD card to the Raspberry Pi. Now we will give the computer an IP address. Now to do this, attach the Raspberry Pi to the computer using the network cable and then enter the network settings, which is shown here. Now you can follow these steps in the figure. Again, we will give the computer an IP address, and to do this, attach the Raspberry Pi to the computer using the cable and enter the network settings. Now the network settings is this. The IP address should be 192.168.1.5. For the subnet mask, it should be 255.255.255.0. And yes, those are actually 3 255 in the subnet mask. For the default gateway, it's 192.168.1.5, the same as the IP address. Now you can connect to the board using the PuTTY or the VNC viewer. Now note that you need to reset the network setting when you finish working with the board so that your computer can get an automatic IP address from the internet provider. Now we proceed to the section 5 of this course, which is the programming with the GPIO with Python. Raspberry Pi board has 28 connections, point or pin called the GPIO. Some of them are used for electronic control output, while others are used to send signals called input providing power and communication protocol. For the GPIO power and control pins, as you can see on the right side figure, now the pin 17 provides a 3.3 volt 50 milliampere, and in case you need more than 50 milliampere, you need to use an external relay to control or you might damage the board. Then we have the pin 24 that provides 5 volt and it is connected to a micro USB on the board. For the pin 6, 9, 14, 20, 25 are for ground. And then for the pin 3, 5, 7, 8, 10, 11, 12, 13, 15, 16, 18, 19, 21, 22, 23, 24, 26 is for control operation as input or output. You can control this using the written software. Now, an important note here is that pin numbers is different than GPIO numbering. For example, pin 3 is GPIO 2. So you always need to return to the image in the documentation for the right numbering. The GPIO communication protocol programming languages. Now, for the Raspberry Pi supports 4 communication protocols. We have the I2C, the SPI, the UART, and the OneWire. And these protocols work at the same pins, so you can program pins to be input or output or communication protocol. For our programming languages, Raspberry Pi supports almost all programming languages including C, C++, C# or the Mono, Java, we have Python, Perl, Ruby, Pascal, and many more. And the best language to be used in Python, since it has so many libraries, support documentation as well as examples, you can choose any language that you are good at and program in Raspberry Pi by using it. For Python, the basic operations would include is by starting to write hello world in the command line. For mathematical calculations in Python, you can do any mathematical operation easily. Just type the two numbers and the result will come. And to define any variable, just type the variable followed by equal sign, then the value.